Mic test. So good morning, everyone. Okay, may we request the body's attention as we will begin the program in 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. Okay, once again, good morning. So we may formally start the program. So distinguished guests, members of the College of Social Sciences faculty and staff, University of the Philippines-Baguio community, a pleasant morning to each and everyone. Okay, the College of Social Sciences Lectures Committee is devoted towards the provision of insightful discussions and conversations on various pressing social realities as inquired by leading and emerging scholars in the social sciences. Inspired by the bigger thrust of the social sciences to explain what is beyond the obvious of social reality, the CSS Lectures Committee, okay, endeavors to deepen our understanding on the things that matter most to the society. This year, the community presents a year-round series of lectures under the theme Social Science in Practice, Trends, Networks, and Breakthroughs. The theme encapsulates lectures that highlight the practical role of social scientists in society through research and development. More specifically, the series of lectures aim to showcase trends in the various social science disciplines, elucidate those trends through a network of interdisciplinary ideas, determine societal phenomena that are explained by the identified trends and networks of ideas, and situate such trends, networks, ideas, and realities in the larger social science paradigm. To do so, the community invited leading and emerging scholars in the social sciences to discuss their research papers or academic reflections as guided by their disciplines. Moderators from other social science disciplines were also tapped in hopes of infusing a more interdisciplinary approach to plenary discussions. For the months of November and December, the committee is pleased to announce the following upcoming lectures. On November 29, tomorrow, Mr. Ruel Caricativo and Mr. Edgar Subitan will talk about labor unions and bargaining agreements. On December 2, Dr. Eileen Mijares will talk about her research on Duterte's war on drugs. And today, we shall listen to one important scholar in the field of political science. The talk will explore the US elections outcome and its implications for American politics, as well as to global actors like Ukraine, Israel, China, and key issues such as trade and climate change. Our speaker today is none other than Dr. Stephen Rood. So Dr. Stephen Rood served as a professor of political science at the University of the Philippines College of Baguio from 1981 to 1999. He was the and from 1999 to 2017, he was the Philippine country representative for the Asia Foundation, focusing on governance and development initiatives. Dr. Rood completed his doctoral dissertation titled Interpretation in American uh, Electoral Studies and is the author of The Philippines, What Everyone Needs to Know, which was published in the Oxford University Press in 2019. Our speaker will be accompanied by Dr. Alejandro Ciencia from the Department of Economics and Political Science, and Mr. Zuriel Domingo from the Department of History and Philosophy as moderators. Please welcome our second entry to the Social Science in Practice, Trends, Networks, and Breakthroughs, Dr. Stephen.
Okay. Um, Good morning to all. I'm very glad to be here, in particular, this spot. On this site 40 years ago, UP Baguio had a high school. In the Philippines 40 years ago, there was an economic crisis which led to a budget crunch for the University of the Philippines as a whole. So the university administration decided to say that if you want a high school, you have to have, it has to be as a lab school. So you need a Department of Education. So UP Baguio had to decide whether to have a Department of Education or to close the high school. And a young, somewhat naive fiscal analyst was given the task of talking about the financial implications of these various options. And the college executive board met to discuss the financial implications. I hasten to say that the financial analyst was not on the college executive board. He just provided a paper. And there was, of course, a demonstration. And I just found out this morning that there's a video of this demonstration. Nope. Okay. So it turns out there's a video of this demonstration, which unfortunately does not include my favorite protest sign of all time, Steve Rood, go home. Exactly, ma'am. That's the going. Talagang hit the home. This is my home. Thank you very much. I am home. Okay, and I'm glad to be back home. So you've heard what this is supposed to be about. This is supposed to be about the US election and its implications, both globally and for the Philippines in particular. Okay, so I'm in charge of moving this. Right, is coming in at work. Okay, I think we're on. All right. Uh, Generally speaking, when listening to the news about vote in the United States, you're hearing mostly about the presidential vote. Okay. Presidential vote is the top bar there, and it looks like Trump won an overwhelming victory. The Electoral College is this peculiar way in the federal system of the United States where every state gets as many votes as two senators plus however many representatives they have. Montana has one representative, so it has 3 votes in the Electoral College, where there are more than 40 from New York, Texas, California, the populous states. But if you win 51% of the vote, you get 100% of the electoral vote. So that's why suddenly Biglaan at the end of the night, they say, okay, he's all the way up to 312. Okay. Whereas in fact, he got a little less than 50% of the votes, 49.9%. They're still counting, so that's good. Next time I give this social weather stations lecture, it'll be slightly different. Whereas Harris got 48.3% of the vote, meaning it's a lot closer in the popular vote than it looks on the electoral vote. Now, some Democrats are saying that this means, you didn't get a majority of the vote. But that's not quite true because there is another candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who pulled out of the race and gave his support to Trump and has been nominated as Secretary of Health. So he's on the Trump team. But the Democrats wanted him to stay in the race in case he could bring Trump's vote down. And so he got 0.5% of the vote nationwide. So if you add the two of them together, they're slightly over 50%. Whatever, this is the first time in a long time that the Republicans have won the popular vote. Trump back in 2016 lost the popular vote, but still won the electoral vote. This time around, he wins both. Senate naman, in the Senate, 1/3 are elected every 3 years. 2 years, geez, I'm in the wrong country. 3 years in the Philippines, 2 years in the States, right? So every 2 years, 1/3 is elected. And this time around, the Republicans have 53 out of the 100 senators. Now, it's important to know that in the United States, in order to get anything through the Senate, you need 60 votes, not 53 votes, not 50 votes. And the last time since in the last 45 years or so, there's only been like 10 months where one of the parties had 60 votes when a Republican switched to the Democrats back in 2007. But normally speaking, they have to figure out how to get 60 votes because it takes 60 votes to cut off debate. Senate sometimes styles itself as the world's foremost debating society. The exception to the 60 vote rule is appointments to the cabinet and to the judiciary, where now it's 50 votes. And that's why both presidents are trying to stuff the judiciary with their appointees. There's a whole rush on right now as Biden's trying to get it done before he leaves. But that's 53 to 47, which is much closer to the popular vote. And then out down at the House of Representatives, where you have 535, all of them elected every 2 years, you can see that it's almost 50-50 again. Okay, the Republicans have 219. They might get up to, there's still three seats not yet completed. They might get a little bit above. So if they stick together, that's a big if. But if they stick together, they can pass stuff in the House of Representatives all by themselves. Now, the trouble with 50 is the crazies in your party can stop you. And as you may know, there's crazies in both parties. And so it doesn't quite work that way. But anyhow, by the way, Trump has nominated 3 members of the House of Representatives. Okay, one of whom has withdrawn, Matt Gaetz. It's a wonderful story, but I only have 45 minutes. And there's 2 others, okay, and they will stay in the House until they get confirmed, and then they'll resign, and there will have to be a special election. But at least at the beginning, they can arrange the House, who's the speaker, and so on. All right, so some of the data, as you can imagine, there's tons and tons and tons of data. That's the county level electoral votes, okay? And blue is Democrats, red is Republicans. This is the product increasingly of what's called the big sort. It used to be there are many more mixed counties, but people started moving into neighborhoods where everybody's alike. Okay. So I was there. I was born in that blue dot. I grew up in that blue dot. I went to college in that blue dot. I went to graduate school in that blue dot. The Asia Foundation headquarters, where I was for 17 years, is in that blue dot. My sister is in that blue dot. My brother is in that blue dot. And I have a sister who's in that red chunk there. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, the sister in the red chunk voted blue, and the sister in the blue chunk voted red. So geography isn't destiny, but you get an idea of how divided the country is. And this middle part is often called the flyover country, because we important people from the blue area fly over it. My wife and I have driven through it. It's quite big, so it saves a lot of time. But this next one is by density. That makes it look a lot closer, because the big red swathes in the middle are mostly white because nobody lives there. Okay. I mean, it's very less densely populated. So this, again, is more, if you look at the blues and you look at the reds, it looks like they basically balance out, which is the way the country has been for quite some time, very evenly divided. I could go through the blue dots again, but I won't. The point is, right? Basically, as I said, most of the people that I email with 1 or 2 exceptions, most of the people I email with in the States are Democrats, anti-Trump, all right? So if you live in that little echo chamber, you're surprised. On the other hand, I'm from the social weather stations. I believe in data, okay? I wasn't surprised. I knew it was going to be fairly close one way or the other. So here are the factors voted, okay? The economy, okay? This is based up, so this is like 21% of all voters say the economy is the most important, but Republicans are more likely to say it than Democrats, right? Immigration is second, okay? Again, Republicans are more likely to say it. So spoiler alert, Trump had the advantage in both the economy and immigration, which I will show in just a second. And then third is abortion issues, on which the Democrats have an advantage. Okay, and there was a fair amount of campaigning on the issue. Preservation of democracy cuts both ways, frankly. Okay, there's a lot of talk about how the Democrats were not preserving democracy because they nominated Kamala Harris, who never got a vote for as a presidential nominee. It was all for Biden. But anyhow, in the end, what we see here is this is consumer prices. This is inflation. Right? And this is partly a story about the Philippines, right? Because I remember, as the campaign is going on, I'm going, what's the matter with Americans? 8% inflation, it's not even double digit. What's the big deal? Okay. The answer is nobody under the age of 70 has ever experienced 8% inflation in the United States. Okay. They don't have that kind of inflation. We have it all the time, up and down, up and down. Right? And I even left off the 1983, 84, we were up at 50%. Okay. So I love this. This is, whoops, I knew, well, no, let's do, okay. It's back. I need full screen again. Yeah. I do that sometimes. Push the wrong button. There we go. You want me to scroll? Keep going. So okay, one more. All right. So this is the first time in the entire series. This is 2022. This is the only time when the US had more inflation than we did. Right? Okay. The reason why this is partly we're accustomed to inflation in this country. Okay. But partly these data here, our inflation going down, 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 down. 2013 is the first time in a 40-year series of social weather stations data where more people say they've gained over the past year than lost. Okay. And since then, that's what they always say, except during the pandemic, when of course everyone said we're worse off now. Okay. But low inflation is what leads the normal Filipino respondent to say, yes, we're better off now. And I must say, I told Mahar Mangajas, the founding president of Social Weather Station, I first heard him say that in a conference in Canberra in 1992, where he was scolding the economic manager, saying it's inflation, not GDP growth. And he's right. But in any case, the prices of, let's see, the prices went up 20% over Biden's term, as opposed to only 7% during Trump. Okay. So people are upset. And the thing about inflation is everybody feels it. Unemployment, if you're unemployed or you've got friends and relatives, yes, but otherwise you're okay. Inflation, everybody feels it and they all get mad. Encounters with migrants. This is the southern border. Okay, here we go. This is, interestingly enough, this is Obama, right? It's not widely known, but Obama, in fact, was fairly tough on the border. Right? He was, in fact, he deported more people per year than Trump did while he was president. Okay? So, but here comes Trump, January 2016, he gets elected, it goes way down, okay, because people are scared. And Trump is separating the families from their children and stuff like that. Here in early 2019, because of the political blowback, he relaxed that policy. And so there was a sudden surge, but then they found other ways to clamp down. Okay, so April 20. Okay, here comes the Democrats. This is Biden, right? In short, it's really true that hundreds of thousands, millions of people are coming over the border. Yeah, 4 million came over the border rather than 1 million. So 4 times as many as Biden's thing. And people are really upset. Okay, a lot of people are upset. And if I may go back a little bit. See these, this is the southern border, right? Down here. These, these red things. These are Hispanic Americans. They're voting for Trump. They don't like immigrants. They don't like illegal immigrants any more than anybody else does. All of you who have relatives in the States, which relatives waited 10 or 12 years to get in, are not very happy about people who swim across the border and get to stay. So it is not, and being anti-immigrant, anti-illegal immigrants is not necessarily racist and so on and so forth. So, there was an interesting feature on this. In there, where'd it go? My dot. Oh, finger was on. This is why you don't get old lecturers, right? Anyhow, so this is like 95% Hispanic. It's always voted Democrat. And then after getting invaded by Mexicans, they voted Republican. Okay. So migrants, so on, so forth. Okay. So in short, I mean, this is, let me go back because I love that. So in short, you look at that, people talk about how it's a close election, but it was a very bad election for the Democrats. They lost ground in 95% of the places in the country. Kamala Harris lost, by my numbers, she lost 16% of those with white people without college degrees, 26% of African Americans, 27% of Hispanics, and 19% of young voters. That's not the percent who voted for her. That's the percent less who voted for her than the previous elections. She really dropped. The only place she did not drop is college-educated white women. Okay? And there's not enough college-educated white women to elect a president. So we have trouble. So that's the American election part. I could go on and on and on and on, and on, but I only have 45 minutes. Okay. Lost my time. I've already lost 20 minutes, so I only have 20 minutes to go. Okay, so what does this mean? All right, so first, let us understand Donald Trump. Hooligan. That's his mugshot. That's an honest to God mugshot taken by a police a member of the police down in Georgia when he got arraigned for a criminal case. Okay, I mean, that's his favorite picture. He puts it on T-shirts, right? He loves it. They put me in. So he came to the United States as the public's before there was The Apprentice on TV and stuff like that. He had a best-selling book called The Art of the Deal about being a real estate broker in New York City. Okay, and part of what he's talking about is this famous mob lawyer by the name of Roy Cohn, who taught him, always hit back, never apologize. Right. So I mean, he said it straight up. When someone attacks me, I always attack back, except 100 times more. This has nothing to do with a tirade, but is rather a way of life. It's kind of an interesting way of life that now we have in this president. He really is a very interesting character. The art of the deal. He thinks he can make deals. When he says he's going to stop the Ukraine war on day one, he says, I can make a deal. It means I can make a deal to stop the war. I can talk to Putin, I can talk to Zelensky, and we can get this done. So we'll have to see. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So stop. Give me the next page. Prediction is very difficult, especially about the future. Now, Niels Bohr, a famous physicist, is the one who said it, but most Americans think Yogi Berra said it. And Yogi Berra is not the cartoon character. Yogi Berra is who the cartoon character is named after. He's a famous baseball player. He was a catcher. So you've got all these different people who get appointed. And Willie Long was saying a while back, he started getting this stuff in his head. Okay. And people are trying to figure out, well, what does this mean? What does that mean? Right. So he appoints this guy by the name of Howard Luke. Are the Americans listening? I was worried about that. Anyhow, he apparently appoints this guy by the name of Howard Lutnick as Commerce Secretary, and Howard Lutnick is against tariffs. He appoints somebody by the name of Scott Bessant as Treasury Secretary, who is pro tariffs. So is he anti-tariff or pro tariff? He's got the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, former senator. Senator Marco Rubio. But Secretary of Defense is this guy by the name of Pete Hegseth, who's a Fox News commentator, former major, but you lie. Okay, he hates woke. I mean, basically, you're trying to figure this out. So for me, that's the wrong question. He wants it that way. He wants them to be arguing with each other, because then he gets to make the decision. If they all agree, this is a fact about bureaucracy. If everybody down in the bureaucracy agrees, the people on the top never hear about it. So you set up a bureaucracy to fight with each other, and then the decisions percolate up to you. He gets these things, and he's going to have to make his decisions. And we're not quite sure how he's going to make his decisions. So there's a lot going on in this world right now, and a lot of it revolves around Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. And we're trying to figure it out. Okay. And Trump likes these guys. That's the first thing. He recently said they're smart, tough, they love their countries. He said, I really like Xi Jinping. And he had, fell in love with Kim Jong-un, but then fell out of love, and so on and so forth. You just don't know how this is going to work, right? Because it's these guys interacting. Can they make a deal, and so on and so forth. So there are a couple of things to think about that are basic background facts, not about Trump, but about the situation. Okay? The situation with China has been called the Thucydides trap. Okay. Thucydides, for you who are where to go, the history professor, Thucydides is a Greek historian who wrote about the Peloponnesian War, right? And the point there is Athens is up here, rich and powerful, and Sparta's coming up. And so a war happened. That way also in the World War I. Up comes the Germany, and here's UK, right? So you have it. So there's one argument says, here's the United States, here comes China, we might get trapped into a war. That's a basic fact, and so what does Xi Jinping want, and what does Trump want out of him, and so on and so forth. Okay? So it's hard to know how they're going to interact. Similarly, his appointment nominee for Office of National Intelligence, Director of National Intelligence, is this woman by the name of Tulsi Gabbard. And she believes there's a theory that, in essence, the West provoked Putin into the war in Ukraine by moving NATO too far east. Too far east. Now, there are a lot of people saying, well, maybe this means that she's a Russian asset. No, there are perfectly normal academics who say this. Okay, this is a normal. I don't agree with the theory. It's a normal theory. So there is this possibility that there's going to be some sort of accommodations reached between Trump and these other people. There's either some wild speculation that Trump will go to Tehran in Iran the same way Richard Nixon went to Beijing and China. Total China hawk going to China, the total Iran hawk going to Iran. Who knows? But okay. Let's see if this. Yeah, Ukraine and Taiwan. I promised. Okay. So as I said, he's repeatedly said he will end the war on Ukraine in day one. In fact, he said it even before. got turned president. Just getting done. So actually, the Ukrainians have started getting tired of the war. As you can see there, the data are now a majority of them want negotiations rather than victory. And if we look over here, this is Americans, right? Are we doing too much to support and so on? So this has been going, the too much has been going up. And so by now, Republicans are much more likely to think so than Democrats. Like somebody, Vice President Vance thinks we shouldn't be sending all that money and stuff like that to Ukraine. So there's a certain war weariness in the United States. There's a certain war weariness in Ukraine, and so maybe, who knows? Maybe there's a deal to be made there. And Zelensky himself said something about negotiating next year, but he wants to get a better fighting position before negotiating. Similarly, Taiwan, right? One of the things Trump says all the time, and you may have heard mostly about it because of NATO, he says all the time, the allies should do more. They're taking us for a ride. Let's make sure they spend more of their own money. So this is his quote about Taiwan. I know them very well, respect them greatly. They take about 100% of our business, I think. Right? They should pay us for defense. You know, we're no different than an insurance company. Taiwan doesn't give us anything. But the Taiwanese are not stupid, right? When they call Trump, they say, "Hi, congratulations, and we want to buy more arms. We want to spend more money on our own arms." Okay, so that's a natural reaction. Okay, that's going on. The fear is, of course, that by saying that, he raises doubts about whether or not the U.S. will help Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion, thereby raising the chances of a Chinese invasion. Okay. But that's how he deals with it. He's looking for a deal. But it's a lot easier when it comes to international trade and climate change. International trade, it's already said, okay, on day one, I will put a 10% tariff on all things coming from China and 25% for all things coming from Mexico. You can do that. I mean, with a stroke of the pen, the president has that power. And, you know, the economists are tearing their hair out, right? The famous tariff increase back during the Depression called the Smoot-Hawley tariff, after the two senator and the House of Representatives, was 6%, and it caused a much worse depression. You start putting tariffs of 10% on, and you're really going to hurt economic growth. But anyhow, it might be an opening bargaining chip. Okay, you don't do it long. We'll see what we get. What are you going to give me if I don't do it, and so on and so forth? Because he can take it on and put it off just like that. Just a stroke of the pen. He doesn't need Congress to do that. Congress has given him a long time ago. Congress gave the president the power to do so. A long time ago, Congress gave a much more predictable president the power to do so, but now he still has the power. On climate change, it's perfectly obvious, right? Day one, he's going to continue the ping pong. Right? Day one of his term, he left the Paris Agreement. Day one of Biden's term, he entered the Paris Agreement. Day one of his term, he's going to leave the Paris Agreement. Okay, but it's not just the Paris Agreement. It's not just a piece of paper. It's the amount of money that he's willing to give away to foreigners, for crying out loud, for their adaptation to climate change, which he doesn't really believe in. So a lot of the climate change adaptation stuff is going to be off the table. Israel, Gaza, and the Middle East. Somebody, as we were chatting, talked about how much did the discontent among Arab Americans about Gaza affect the election? And the answer is they did. They were concentrated in Michigan, and Trump won Michigan. He won the city of Dearborn, which has a Muslim mayor. Right? Now, if you're thinking purely about the Palestinians in Gaza, that's really weird, okay? Because he's very much more in favor of allowing the Israelis to do whatever they think they need to do. Okay, but if you're thinking in terms of larger issues such as morality, such as not having a woman as the executive in a government. It could not possibly be a rational vote. And the fact that it happened um, in a swing state, the swing state I vote in, got to mail it in, because I voted and I won't tell you who I voted for, but I didn't vote for the winner. Anyhow, so he's saying those holding the, if they're still holding the hostage when I take office, they're going to pay a very big price. Now, his ambassador designate to Israel has said sovereignty over Judah and Samaria, Judea and Samaria, that the right wingers call it that, the rest of the world calls it the West Bank, is Israel's decision to make. In short, go ahead and annex it if you want to. And so the International Criminal Court, you may have heard within the last week or so, has issued a warrant for the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu, the president, prime minister. I expect U.S. sanctions on those people. Okay, won't be able to fly to the U.S. except to go to the UN and so on and so forth. Iran, he will reimpose sanctions. Okay. The sanctions weren't necessarily lifted, but Biden wasn't enforcing them very much. So Iran has made about $400 million. This is millions, billion, right? $400 billion in oil exports, which they then give to people like Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthis and Syria and so on and so forth. He's going to do that. And when Israel was talking about what they would do to retaliate for Iran's latest barrage, Biden was saying, your choice, but don't do nuclear and don't do the oil. Okay, nuclear is too dangerous and the oil will raise our prices. Trump goes, get the nuclear first and you're done. What the Israelis did parenthetically is they took out the air defenses. So now they can fly anywhere they want to over Iran. Okay, so maybe they will do something. I don't know, but definitely he's anti environment and he's anti anyhow. So what does it mean for the Philippines? Okay. So President Marcos, what's what everybody does, right? The president, they all call up the president. They compete to get a lineup. The Koreans were really happy they got to Trump before the Japanese did. We beat you. Okay, so I mean, President Marcos got to talk to him, and it was apparently, Kumusta Imelda, right? He knows Imelda. He's a New York real estate guy. Of course, he knows Imelda, right? And he thinks she's beautiful and stuff like that. And then he talked about the alliance. Okay, now we have an alliance. So, the Philippines as a U.S. ally. Okay, here I am in the heart of the University of the Philippines. I think the vast majority of people in this room are uncomfortable with that phrase, U.S. ally. Okay, the fact of the matter is we are. Okay, we are a treaty ally. We know the Mutual Defense Treaty and stuff like that, and a lot of people are hoping that our the defense treaty will be invoked in the West Philippine Sea, and a lot of people are afraid that the defense treaty will be invoked in the West Philippine Sea, and so on and so forth. But for U.S. government, it falls into the category of U.S. ally, and it's treated differently, and so on. So it's got different lines in the budget, it's got different offices in the State Department, the Defense Department, and so on and so forth. Okay, so here's this bit about pay your own way. Okay, so this is military expenditures as percent of GDP. Okay, this is low, and this sorry, this is low and this is high, and then this is how much of a deficit do you have? Okay? So there's the Philippines. Okay, we're pretty low on the military expenditures as a percent of GDP, but we don't have much of a budget trade deficit with the United States. It's pretty balanced. That's New Zealand. Okay, what's the difference between New Zealand and the Philippines? The basic difference is New Zealand is in a very safe neighborhood, And the Philippines is in a not so nice, safe neighborhood. So, in some realistic sense, in some realistic sense, they can do it. That's Thailand. That's Japan. And Japan is, they have plans to raise that, but they haven't yet. That's South Korea, and that's Taiwan. Big deficits, but lots of spending. The 2% line here, and you can't see it because that 2% is the NATO goal. So they're above the NATO goal. And so he also hassles the NATO countries. When he was president, very few made it. But after 4 years of hassling by him and some by Biden, something like 3/4 of them are now above 2%. Now, but of course, Secretary Teodoro, these missiles that came over with the visiting forces, and you left them here, just parked here. Why don't we buy them? And the idea is that's the first thing Trump hears. Oh, they're going to buy our stuff, right? So again, dealing, it's trying to figure out how to deal with it. But this is a real estate slogan. Okay, what's the most important fact about the Philippines is where it is. The Spanish wanted us in order to go off and conquer China, for crying out loud. They weren't really after us. Okay? So we're on what's called the first island chain. The missiles that the Americans parked up in the North Luzon can close the straits going to Taiwan, Bashi Strait. So it's in the sort of place where you can use your leverage in order to get more out of Trump. So it's likely the numbers from the U.S. have been going up very rapidly in military assistance. Civilian assistance from USAID has been about 1 or 1.25, 100 or 125 million dollars forever. But the military assistance is supposed to go way up. Okay? And if the Philippines starts spending some of its own money, that might continue. Right? It might not. Okay, Trump might say, well, look, they're not spending enough money. We're going to stop doing this. You don't know with Trump at any particular time. Richard Hidarian just has a column I was reading this morning where he points out the trouble with buying American stock is it makes it less likely that you can hedge, right? Sort of say halfway China, halfway US and stuff. Suddenly, if what you're doing is letting the American station here, buying their stuff and so on, then you're getting yourself on the American side in any confrontation with the United States. Of course, the United States sort of going, do we have to be on the Filipino side in any kind of confrontation between the Philippines and China? So it's a balancing act. And so we'll have to see how that goes. All right. Final. What is that? Anyhow, final topic, Philippine Americans. There's way too much about this. Okay, relax. Club. He said that forever. It's like environment and so on. He's against illegal immigration. He says he's going to he loves legal immigration, and he talks about plans to make it more possible. But he plans to deport millions and millions of illegal immigrants. Well, if 4 million have come in just the last 4 years, there are millions and millions that can be deported. Okay. So the threats to Filipinos, I just think that's exaggerated. In the first place, they're fairly well off. Okay. Filipino Americans are not an oppressed minority, right? They're the third largest or fourth, I guess, Mexican, Indian, Chinese, and Filipino. They have above average income, below average poverty rates, and so on. So, but they are more to the point, they are more likely to be naturalized. They're honest to God citizens. Okay. And it takes a lot to deport a citizen. Okay. I mean, it's possible, but only 20 or 30 people in the last 10 years have been denaturalized. It's very difficult to do. The numbers of undocumented Filipinos, actually, I was a little surprised it's so small, given all the talk about TNT, talk about embargo. but it's between 130,000 and 300,000. And you know, as it says, in the last 10 years, an average of 1,000 a year have been deported. So even if they started work on the 130,000, it's going to take them a very long time. And it's going to take a very long time before they get over to naturalized citizens. So, and remittances are counter-cyclical. When things get bad in the Philippines, Filipinos overseas send more money back. Okay, it's just a fact of nature. It's a blessed fact of nature because it keeps our economy, consumption focused economy moving along. So, daghang salamat sa tanan. Akyamanan. Ayaw ba? We do. We haven't rehearsed this part. Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Rood. At this point, I'd like to again acknowledge the presence of Ma'am Lydia Casambre. Kami ni Sir Toto, kami ay students ni Dr. Rood at ni Ma'am Casambre. So we consider ourselves Dr. Rood and Casambre babies. Kami mga estudyante mga 1980s. Okay. At the same time, I'd like to point out that Dr. Rood was our go-to guy in the 1980s, go-to problem solver. So if we needed a teacher sa statistics 101, Dr. Rood. Teachers sa SOCSI 180, Dr. Rood, apart from poli-sci subjects. Kaya nga, ito, again, I'm promoting the book. This is The Philippines by Dr. Rood. This is 1990. Tama ba? Yeah. Amazon. Nagpabili ako sa library pero kung wala pa silang copy. Okay, so I was assigned by Herald to be the discussant, and one of my functions is to help the audience understand the lecture, to pose questions to be answered, and to organize. So ang suggestion ko, Toriel, okay, we can actually think of at least 3 types of questions. Okay, one would be how to explain the results of the elections. So these are after the fact questions. Okay, what does the data say? How are we to explain the victory of Donald Trump? The other set of questions, of course, would relate to the implications of his victory. And the third type of questions would be other somewhat peripheral questions. Did Biden actually cheat in 2020? Okay. Why did Hillary lose and Kamala lose but not Biden? Why did Trump win in 2016 but again lost in 2020? But I have more personal questions, pero I don't think Dr. will have enough time to address this. So number one, will America be great again? That's the first question. And the second question, do you advise convicted felons to run for the US presidency to avoid punishment or jail time? Okay, so we'll now entertain questions from the audience. So again, 3 types of questions. Questions about the explanation for the victory,